Good. All right, let's assess the situation. Let's do our best to take an unbiased view on the reality that is before us. So, man, wow. A lot has happened in the past 2 weeks, man, and it's like under that eclipse. I mean, think about what happened the last time you had an eclipse in Taurus. It was literally the Lehman Brothers moment, the 2008 financial crisis. History doesn't repeat itself. It rhymes. This time, it happened to the cryptos, and it wasn't the Lehman Brothers. It was FTX. So that definitely monkey wrenches a lot of the thesis that we've been holding strong to. But really importantly here, the most critical thought that I've had in the past 2 weeks, and it haunts me to my core in the best way possible, is that I don't know anything. And guess what? Nobody else knows anything. That is the key thing. Now, there are some things that are more likely to occur than other things. For example, Bitcoin halving cycle. Pretty likely that will occur. And it's scheduled to occur out here in April 2024. So, even though I don't know anything, I'm willing to bet that the Bitcoin halving cycle will happen again. Now, will that cause another bull market? I don't know. That I don't know. But I also am willing to bet that it probably will. Now, this is why we can't always just rely on history so simply, because what might be occurring here is this might actually just be the start of the bear market, and we may not get the altcoin season 702 retracement. That's something to consider here, okay? Now, I think that's probably because this cycle, unfortunately, was a little bit hijacked by a lot of the institutional, the Wall Street and stuff, and they basically over-leveraged themselves, and that over-leveraging destroyed the market. It really did. You don't want people to freaking get in here over-leveraging. That's really what this is all about here. You had Michael Saylor over-leveraging here, and you had all the rest of them over-leveraging down here, and I think that might have kind of compromised the potential for an altcoin season to occur in here. So, since I don't actually know if there's going to be an altcoin season or if there isn't, I'm holding, I'm buying, I'm committed to however long it takes to see this crypto market rise again. I'm willing to bet that it is going to rise again. But since I don't know if it will, well, then I have a downside hedge as well. And that downside hedge is executed in the United States stock market, okay? So let's just take a look at the stock market here. If we, set aside crypto, okay, we'll get back to crypto in a second, but let's look at the stock market here. Good old Dow Jones on the daily chart, okay? Now, I did mention last week that I was selling stocks last week. On Friday, specifically, last Friday, not this past Friday, but 2 Fridays ago, selling stocks. Look at this inflection point. I believe this is probably an inflection point. I believe this is probably the beginning of a downside move here. Now, whether that downside move takes us to new lows, I don't know. Or is it just going to be a wave 2 and a bullish 5-wave impulse? That I have no idea. But what I do think is this is a major inflection point. So this past week, I was taking short positions. Yes, I am prepared to make money on the downside of this market. So I've accumulated short positions up at this level. Why would I do that? Well, because on the daily chart, I see very, very clear bearish divergence. What does that mean? I see the RSI making a lower high while the price makes a higher high. Very, very simple. And this is on the daily chart. So to me, that says that this move is running out of steam. And if I consider the fact that there's definitely some bearish macroeconomic factors that are taking shape here, I would consider that it's probably unlikely that the Dow Jones breaks this high, right? And of course, I don't know. This is all a gamble, and this is all my best bet. And since I don't know, I keep the crypto long hedge. I'm just long crypto because at any moment, at any freaking moment, Bitcoin could have a retracement. Now, I don't know if that's going to be a 702 altcoin season retracement. It might only just be a freaking short squeeze because of how many people are piled in the short side on Bitcoin right now. That's definitely possible. But I do think it's possible that Bitcoin can have some type of short squeeze, small retracement situation, maybe only to our 236. It obviously could go higher than that. But the point is, I'd be taking profits if we see a move like that. I'd be taking profits out of crypto. And then I would literally be getting short squeezed in the stock market if that happened, because that would probably mean that the stock market actually pushed higher. Now, that's not what I think is going to happen. What I think is going to happen is you're going to start to see a downside move here coming in the stock market. Now, there's a lot of reasons why I think that's going to happen. Definitely some technical reasons. Obviously, look at the volume here. You got decreasing volume into the top of this move. Also, I just mentioned, I don't think it's likely you're going to get past this high. There's all of those reasons. We're going to look at the other indices in a second here. But also, DXY. DXY is my main freaking indicator here. I'm telling you, this is the real fear and greed index. You got the VIX, but you got the DXY. The DXY is telling you a really important story here. Now, this is what I think is taking shape. This, to me, looks like a freaking wave 4 pullback. This is your wave 4 pullback. And guess what? It's a bullish correction. So like I had said previously, I did say that I think it's possible that the DXY makes another high. Even though it's in a topping process, I do think it's likely to make another high. And you can sort of see the strength here, because you can see that on this weekly candle, it didn't even make it all the way down to the moving average. It got pulled down, but it didn't make it. And it closed a relatively bullish candle without even reaching that 200-day moving average. So to me, that tells me that the DXY is likely gearing up for the wave 5 move coming out of this wave 4. Now, where do I think that wave 5 is headed? Well, I'm looking for that 1618, right? That's where wave 5s typically end up. So the distance between the top of wave 3 and the bottom of wave 4 gives me that 1618 target, which I believe the DXY is heading towards. And I believe when it hits that target, there's a really good chance the stock market will be bottoming at that point. Whether it's making new freaking lows or it's not making new freaking lows, it will be bottoming at the time that the DXY is potentially around this 120 level. Now, what am I also looking for to really kind of confirm that this impulse on the DXY would be complete? Well, I'd be looking for more bearish divergence on the DXY. So I'd be looking for this price to correlate to a lower reading on the RSI, right? And you already see bearish divergence coming in, right? You see the price going up, but you see the RSI going down. But now we've corrected this entire cycle on the RSI, right? What I mean by that is you no longer are holding this relative, this sort of uptrend, right? You've corrected this uptrend, which is why I think this is a wave 4. And I think you're coming into a wave 5. That wave 5 should give us a lower reading on the RSI to confirm that it is, in fact, the end of this first impulsive move on the DXY, which would be very, very, very bullish for the stock market and also crypto. Now, the timing of that is interesting. It might take a really long time, or it might take a really short time. That I don't know. So if I'm just kind of trying to act in the moment and trying to look at the most immediate term profitable decision, I'm looking to make money on this downside move, whether this is a wave 2 or whether this is a larger move to the downside. There's opportunity here. Now, because I don't know how big the move down is, I'm literally going to be taking profits like pretty soon on this, right? Like as soon as the Dow Jones is back down to the 200 period moving average, I'm exiting a good part of my short positions, right? Now, I'm leaving on the table because it could keep going lower, but I'm definitely exiting because I can't rule out the fact that this is actually a wave 1, just the start of a 5-wave impulse to the upside to take us to new all-time highs. Because I do think in the back of my mind, I think the stock market is going to new all-time highs in the relatively near future, probably sometime in 2024, if we're realistic about it, because there's so much confluence in these markets. These markets have so much effect on each other. You cannot rule out the fact that after the Bitcoin halving cycle that happens in April 2024, Bitcoin is going to go to a new all-time high, right? Most freaking likely. We don't have any reason to believe it won't at this point. So if Bitcoin is to go to another all-time high after its next halving cycle, you got to believe the stock market is going to another all-time high. But now the time frame is definitely extended, and you're going to be in this like epic choppy volatility for probably the foreseeable future. Maybe 2023 is defined by this kind of volatility, but you can make money on this volatility, right? You can go short just as easily as you can go long in the stock market. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But let's look at the other indices and see if we can kind of corroborate this inflection point here. So if I look at the NASDAQ, also known as the QQQ, it doesn't look good, right? Not looking good. You basically got a massive rejection from the 100 period moving average and a pretty bearish candle closing here. Last week looked more positive, looked better. This week you didn't get the follow through. You kind of got sort of a failed attempt to follow through on this bullish movement. So that's not great. Now look at the S&P 500. It's on the daily chart now, but it's like, this one's hard to really assess, honestly, because you don't have bearish divergence yet. You don't have any divergence, actually, right? So this move could imply continuation. So really hard to say, right? So that's another check in the box of I have no idea, and I'm still long on crypto, because if the S&P 500 is going to keep going up, then crypto is going to keep going up, right? So I don't know. This one, I really hard to call the S&P 500 at this point, at least in the daily chart. If you look on the 4-hour, you're probably going to see some divergence here. And you know what? It's so weak. You barely see it. So this is so hard to call. You do see it, though. It's there. You do see bearish divergence, right? You can see right here, this is a higher reading on the RSI right here than right here. So the price is running out of strength the higher it goes, but just barely on the 4-hour. But okay, let's look at one other market index here, IWM. I never talk about the IWM, but it is a very, very important index here, and it's actually often looked at as a leading indicator. So what do you see on the IWM? You see bearish divergence, crystal freaking clear bearish divergence. So that kind of corroborates with the Dow Jones inflection point, right? You see this thing is kind of struggling to keep its head above water, aka struggling to keep its head above the 200 period moving average, also getting bearish divergence, also getting weakening volume as the price goes up. See, this is aligned with what I think is going on with the Dow Jones. NASDAQ and S&P, harder to sort of assess, but IWM and Dow Jones definitely showing very clear bearish divergence that's probably going to spread to the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 as well. So for those reasons, I definitely lean towards the simple fact that the stock market is at an inflection point. It's probably reversing, right? This coming week, I believe it's probably reversing. And so if the stock market is going down, well, what do we think that's going to do for crypto? Well, that's obviously going to send crypto farther down. But remember, I don't know anything. I literally don't know what's going to happen. I'm definitely very much aware of the fact that Bitcoin could squeeze hard. That's seriously a possible thing that could happen. Definitely Bitcoin could squeeze up. That would send the stock market up, no doubt about it. So what do? I just hold long on crypto. I'll take some profit if we see that squeeze. And you know what? When you look at the altcoins, it's like, look at NewCipher on the 4-hour. It's like, that's hard to read right there. Are people piling short or are people loading up? I literally can't tell. But I definitely think it's not definitively a bearish setup that you've got here. You might have kind of a setup for a retrace, and what I've got measured here, I got that end of May pump here to this current low. Yeah, that potentially sets up a move like this. And obviously, I got a big bag of NewCipher. I'd be selling some, not all, but I'd be selling some of my NewCipher up here, because at this point, it makes a lot of sense to be accumulating cash, right? Especially if my assessment of the DXY is true and the DXY has potentially this wave 5 completion. Man, dollars are going to be pretty freaking valuable in a very short period of time here. And when the dollars are the most valuable, well, that's when you dump them and you buy assets, right? We talked about this a million times. So the thing that I want to kind of draw your attention to here is how much opportunity there really is in a quote-unquote bear market situation, right? Because let's just talk about going short. Let's talk about kind of making money on the downside of the market. So in the current market that we have all of these inverse ETFs, right? So on the IWM, you have TZA. This is a 3x leverage inverse ETF. So if IWM is going down, TZA is going up, right? That's pretty good. So on QQQ, you have the SQQQ, right? So you have another ETF that goes up as the NASDAQ goes down. Now let's just take a look at this thing, right? Because this is a great way to corroborate price action here. What do you see starting on the SQQ? You literally see an uptrend. You see a higher high and you see a series of higher lows. And you also see increasing volume. Now, the RSI tells a little bit of a different story. You technically see bearish divergence on the RSI, but any one indicator doesn't tell us every story. That's why we have to look at so many indices. You got to look at like a lot of different things to really assess the situation here. So the RSI is just another thing where I'm like, well, I really, I don't know. I don't know, and I don't need to know because I'm hedged. So I would just look at the price action. I would say, yeah, this looks like an uptrend. So if this thing is starting potentially an uptrend, and look how freaking high this thing would go, right? You know what I mean? Like, whoa, yeah, for real, right? Like, look where this like COVID stuff happened. Hello, yeah, big gains to be made on the downside, no doubt. But what's important to understand here is if you can make money in a bear market, do you realize how beautifully positioned that makes you to make an absolute slaughtering when the bull market comes back, right? Because assets are just going down in price. The US dollar is going up in value, and then you're making money when everything is going down in value. Like, do you see how that is an excellently outstanding opportunity for you to basically destroy it on the next crypto bull run? And I'll emphasize once again, I do not trade cryptocurrency. I just accumulate all the way to zero, and then I wait until the bull market starts back up again. And I'm also hedged for an altcoin season to still come in here. I'm just now kind of coming to terms with the fact that that might not happen. That might be what's different about this cycle. We might just not get a quote-unquote altcoin season in this cycle. And if we don't, that's perfectly fine because there's so much money to be made elsewhere. And all the money that is to be made elsewhere I'll just load my bags. Load my bags all the way until April 2024 when you get the next Bitcoin halving cycle. And look how long it took from the last Bitcoin halving cycle in May 2020. You had May 2020, and then Bitcoin goes on a psycho freaking bull run and basically tops its first of the double top only a year later, less than a year later. It's like, dude, obviously, the opportunity is insane if you can stand the volatility, if you can stand the bear market. And it's a lot easier to stand the bear market when you realize how much money you can make on the short side of the stock market, right? So, like I said last week, I'm all about the opportunity. I just identify the opportunity. There's always opportunity. It doesn't matter what the economy is doing. It doesn't matter what these markets are doing. There's always opportunity. The key is to identify inflection points. You have to identify inflection points. That's kind of where the risk is. It's like, of course it's a risk if I'm saying that this is an inflection point. It might not be an inflection point. I might get squeezed. That's for sure. But what I'm willing to bet is if I do get squeezed over here on the Dow Jones, then that means crypto is going to be pumping. Bitcoin will be pumping a little bit, but I'll bet you things like NuCypher and TRB and Bond will do pretty impressive moves if Bitcoin squeezes and if the Dow Jones goes a little bit higher. That's for sure. So it's basically a situation where no matter what happens, I'm good with it, right? That's how you really have to play these markets. But in general, I think how I'm going forward is I'm prepared to be taking profits on a potential downside move that is setting up to occur in the stock market. And I've got all these inverse ETFs that I can use. I got SQQ, I got TZA. So what I want to tell you guys is that there's always opportunity. It's always there. You might have to stretch your mind to see that opportunity, but it's always there. We can get what we want out of any scenario that we find ourselves in. And if we find ourselves in a crypto winter situation or a bear market in the US equities market, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. There's a lot of money to be made. The key is not to be greedy, right? The key is not to go all in, not to hold for the biggest possible move to the upside. The key is to take freaking profits when you're in profit, right? So that's really what I got for you guys. I hope you can see the opportunity for yourselves. And I'm going to keep talking about these more, I guess my more technical approach with how I'm actually trading the swings of these markets, how I'm identifying inflection points. That's really what we're going to go through in the rest of this series of White Knuckle Reports. And just know that my ultimate goal here is to just buy as much crypto as possible. That's what it is. Because I'm willing to bet that crypto is going to rise like the phoenix from the ashes. That's something I can comfortably hang my hat on. And if that doesn't happen, well, I'll reassess the situation, and you better believe I'll pivot. I got mad agility up in here. Okay, so all right, good, dude.
Strong champions of intergalactic connection.